Hello, and welcome to Conquering Finale. My name is Jason Lafredo, and today we are still cooperating with chords. We are looking at fretboards again, specifically fretboard styles. Now, as I believe I've taught you already, you can actually change the fretboard style of any one given chord just by going to the chord definition dialog box, choosing a different style here, and clicking OK. We'll change the style of that one fretboard diagram to that new style. Of course, we can all do this more all at once if we make a passage selection like that. Go to Change, Chords, you go to Fretboard Style, and then change this to Jazz, for example. And it will change all the fretboards at once in that selection without changing any of the others. I think I've mentioned also that you can sort of reset the default setting of the fretboard style by choosing edit styles and then choosing one of these others and then setting as default, right? So if you set that as default, now Jazz is the new default fretboard diagram, and it will change that one that you were working on, but then the next time you enter a chord, it will use that Jazz fretboard style to enter new chords. So setting the default only looks forward. It will not retroactively change the fretboard styles. Again, you'd have to go through that utilities change function to do that. All right, so let's talk a little bit more specifically about the Fretboard Style Editor. We click on the Edit Styles. We get the Fretboard Styles dialog box here. And this works somewhat similarly to a lot of other dialog boxes in Finale. We can create a brand new one. We could duplicate one that exists. We can delete one of these fretboard styles if we don't like something we've created. And I just showed you what set as default does. And I'm going to get into the fonts and shapes a little bit later in this video. But for now, let's do something. I do want to mention before I get too far. Finale comes with two different Seville styles here, and the only difference has to do with the font that it's using. So one of them uses Times New Roman, and the other one uses Times. Pretty much the same font. They're a little bit different, and the spacing is a little bit different. That's why you see a slight shift of the letters and numbers when you switch between them. And then there's this one with Seville with shapes, which is essentially the Times New Roman version, but it's using shapes here. It's kind of weird because they're exactly the same shapes. I'm not 100% sure why they have this one as well, but that one's there. There's the wide style. There's the Jazz 2 style and the Jazz style. All of these are the ones that come preset with Finale. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new one. So let's check New. And New Fretboard Style. Sure, that sounds like a good name. Let's just get rid of the parentheses. And whenever you choose New, it's actually going to start you off with one of those Seville, actually the Times New Roman version of the Seville fretboard style. So that's your jumping off point, all right? And then from here, we can change all the settings in here to customize this, all right? So let's actually work our way down the right-hand column first. So we have this thing number of frets, and we can change this to whatever we want. If we want this fretboard style to have 5 frets as the default, we can do that. Now here's the thing about changing this frets and why it says default. When you change to 5 frets, so now I've got this new fretboard style, and I click OK, right? If I were to choose that fretboard style for this chord diagram, new fretboard style, you'll see that it still has 4 frets. It doesn't have the 5 frets like I just said it. This number of frets default really only affects things, first of all, if you have this set as a default. So set that as default now. And you go in here and create a brand new fretboard group. So if I create a new one, you will now see that by default, the number of frets here is 5 instead of 4. Of course, in every fretboard group, we can override that and make that 4 or 6 or whatever we need it to do. But that one setting in the style editor here is only going to apply to brand new fretboard groups that are created after you set this as the default. That's how that works. Otherwise, it sort of doesn't have any function. We do have the option of showing last fret, and with that unchecked, you'll see that last line go away. So if that's the style that you want to use for your fretboards, you can do that. Working our way down on the right side here, we have these view options, and these are literally just for the view within this window. So if we want to see this a little bit larger, we can change the percentage or smaller, whatever we need to do. And we can actually change the units just for this window by doing that. And I'm going to keep working my way clockwise around this window here. And we've got fret number, and we have this text here, FR period. And we can actually change this, and what this is doing is it's changing the text here. So if we wanted to actually spell this all the way out, we can do fret or capitalize the F or something. Whatever we want to do, we can change that to appear however we want. The one thing that we can't change is the number, and I actually had somebody ask recently in one of the forums if they can change the 3 here to a Roman numeral or something, and unfortunately Finale does not allow you to do that. As one limitations of these fretboards. You are stuck with the Arabic numerals there, so that's just how that works. And then below that, we have the hors offset and the vert offset, which makes me laugh because I think this is the only place in Finale where I've seen horizontal and vertical abbreviated in this manner. Usually it's just H and V, but it pretty much works the same way as the horizontal and vertical offsets usually do. Positive numbers go right and negative numbers go left in the horizontal. Positive numbers go up, negative numbers go down in the vertical offset. And this has to do with this text here with the fret number. So if we wanted that fret number to be a little bit higher, we can change this value to something a little bit more. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the horizontal, so I just made it go right. If we wanted to go higher, we have to change the vertical, of course. So we can change that to 0.35, and it'll get a little bit higher. So we do have some control over exactly where the fret number exists. And then actually let's swing over to the left side of this window and look at the spacing options here. And this is sort of the meat and potatoes of designing this fretboard diagram. We have a lot of control over everything here, including the string spacing, which will be the horizontal space between each string. So if we wanted to increase that a little bit, we can make this 0.06, and you'll see it get a lot wider. The string thickness, if you don't think those lines are thick enough, we could make those a little thicker. The fret spacing, so now that we've made it wider, we probably want to make the fret spacing a little bit bigger too, so we could maybe do 0.85 and make it a little bit longer. The fret thickness we could change if we want, so let's make that 0.0085, just get a little bit thicker, and we do have control over the thickness of the nut as well, so if we wanted to make that 0.03, we can get a much thicker nut up there. All right, so that's sort of the nuts and bolts of actually changing the how this diagram itself looks. Below that, we have options for the fingering numbers, and this just applies to the 1, 2, 3, 4 T characters here. And there's horizontal and vertical offsets for these, and they're pretty much, zeros and, well, this number is close to 0, but, zeros are probably going to be pretty close to what you need. If you change the vertical offset, you can see those numbers go upwards a little bit. If we make it really big, you can see it go way, way a lot higher. But generally speaking, around 0 is going to be fine. You may need to futz with these numbers depending on what font you use. In fact, if you use an italicized font, you may need to offset to the left a little bit just to kind of get it to look a little bit more centered, but that's what that would do. And then the whiteout is actually the area that gets whited out on the string when you have the numbers in the middle of the diagram. And 0 is probably just fine, although I do notice that the 1 and the T are a little bit harder to read, so I've discovered that if you change this to 0.005, it actually helps a little bit to see that a little bit better. There you go. That looks a little bit better. So let's talk about what's in this fonts and shapes. And this is actually the window that will control, number 1 in the top section, the fonts of some of these characters. So the fingering and the fret numbers specifically. So if we wanted to change the 3 fret text here, we can do that. Let's set that to, let's go to something like Arial. And if I can find it, Arial, and you know what, we'll make it, I'm changing the fingering, sorry. So let's go to Arial, and let's actually make this 5 bold face. There we go. Arial 5 bold, and you'll see when I click OK, the fingering font changed. And then the fret numbers we can change as well. So let's actually use the Arial font again. If we can find it, Arial, and let's do this. We'll make it a little bit larger, and we'll italicize it this time. So we can see that, and you'll see that my 3 fret has been italicized and made a little bit larger. All right, so that's the font section there. Now, what's below that is these shapes. So the way this works is that initially Finale will set the shapes for the closed fingering, the open string, the muted string, and everything. Um, Pretty much set these as they are. As soon as you select one of these elements, you're specifying a new shape for that element, even if that shape is exactly the same one. It's a little bit confusing, but if you don't do anything here, there are no shapes on this diagram, technically speaking. I would leave the bar alone because there really isn't an alternate bar shape that can be found in the fretboard bar shape selection dialog box. So unless you're going to create your own, which I guess you're welcome to do, I would generally leave this bar shape alone. As for the fingered strings and the open strings and the mute strings and the custom, by the way, is this diamond shaped, and that's actually, I guess that's the harmonic shape, but you can make it whatever you want, I suppose. The fingered string shape, if we select that, in this fretboard fingered string shape selection dialog box, we have a lot of options to choose from, and we can create our own if we need to. We can duplicate and create our own. So literally just selecting a new one. This is actually one of the ones from one of the jazz sets. We can select that, click OK, and you'll see that it will change that fingered fret to that new character. Now, interestingly, this is actually the only place that we can change the position of the characters relative to the fretboard diagram grid. All right, so without doing anything here, it's going to be centered just as it is. But if for whatever reason one of these characters is offset a little bit, what we can do is choose that one, and we can actually choose the original one if we wanted to, but let's choose this new one and edit it. And sometimes if this is too small, you just have to find the right view percentage in the shape designer here. We can actually move this a little bit upwards, for example. If I move that a few clicks upwards, click OK. Basically what I've done is I've edited this shape, and when I exit out of here, what you'll see is that that fingering has now just jumped a little bit higher, right? So this is actually the only way to fully control where this is on the grid. I've just made that a little bit lower and to the right, and so now we should get something, yeah, a little bit off center there. So, so that's sort of what's going on with that, but we can always go back and select the original one to get that, all right? And then, so let's talk about the remaining options here for the handle offset for the fretboard in this style. Now, as you know, the fretboard diagram has its handle, and you can see in my score here that the handle is sitting directly below the handle for the chord symbol itself, right? So that's sort of how Finale is handling this. We can offset this handle. Now, the 0 points for the horizontal and vertical are putting the handle at the top of the fretboard, dead center of the fretboard, right? So if we change this to something like negative 0.14, negative 0.15, negative 0.16, that looks good. It's a little bit hard to see, but I just saw my handle move all the way to the left edge of the fretboard diagram here, right? So this would actually be a way to get your fretboard diagram to left align with the chord symbols, right? So now that I've chosen that, and oops, I gotta choose the right fretboard, there we go. What you'll see is that now the handle is left justified on the fretboard diagram, and it's lining up with the chord symbol, right? This is actually a little bit more useful if you're using the left align chords, because what this will do is, well, of course, this is not the style, right? If I were to select this one and choose that new fretboard style, you'd see all of these fretboards will now be left aligned with the chords as well, which can be kind of handy. The one oddity about this is that if you do this with a fretboard diagram that's not the full width, in this case, like if I were to change the style of this ukulele diagram to this new fretboard style, and remember this new fretboard style now has that handle offset to the left, you can see that the handle gets a little bit too far to the left, and the reason is because that offset is absolute, so it's picking the center point of this this diagram and going that far to the left, which in the case of only a 4-string instrument is too far to the left, so it's not actually going to completely left justify it. So just gets a little bit technical in that regard. And of course, changing the vertical offset would actually, let me go back to 0 here. Changing the vertical offset would actually effectively put the fretboard diagram closer or farther away from the chord symbol. So if I did something like -0.1, you'll see, first of all, the handle will sort of get a little bit down into the fretboard diagram. And when we choose that, you'll see what happens is that the fretboard diagram is now a lot closer to the chord symbol itself. That might have been too much of an offset, but you get the idea. And let's see, what else? Other than that, yeah, so again, with it set as default, if you now set this new fretboard style as your default, every time you enter or every time you add a chord, it will use this fretboard style if you're showing fretboards. So again, just that's how the set as default works. And I think that covers it. So, that's how the fretboard style editor works. That's all the options that are available. I hope this has helped. Thanks for watching. Come back. We still have a bit more to do in the Cooperating with Chords series. So come back for that, and we'll keep on going. All right, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon on the next video.